Yeah. What's that?
The government has gone as far as a number of government employees says.
Okay, if we can settle down a little bit, we'll get the program started here.
Hold more money out of my.
Kurt's going to monitor the door for us for a few more minutes, make sure nobody else shows up. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I know it's bitter cold out, but thank you for making the effort tonight. This is a co-branded sponsorship between the WA, so thank you, WA, for teaming up with us on this. Wisconsin Umpire Association, as well as SUSA, Southeast Wisconsin Softball Association. For those that don't know, my name is Mike Edick. I'm the president of SUSA. We've been in collaboration with WA to put this together for a couple of years, so I want to say thank you to Steve Kurkowski, Scott Bruni, Steve Helgendorf, and all the rest of the guys. Thank you so much for cooperating with us and getting this handled for us. Tonight is a very important topic that I want to talk about that we'll talk in a second with the expert, de-escalating of conflict. Now, I don't know if you've been a part of this before. We had this with this gentleman a few years ago, which is an excellent class. So that's why I wanted it again, because we all got beat up on the field, whether it be soccer, football, baseball, softball, whatever it is. Officials are getting beat up out there. So this is a great way to talk about how to de-escalate the situation instead of getting screamed at all the time. So this is a dear friend of mine. He's also a client of mine from Vistelar. Please put your hands together for Mr. Pete Jazz Jaskulski.
Thanks, Mike. Can you hear me? I've never been accused of not talking loud enough. I move around a lot too. It's great to be back here. I see a lot of familiar faces. I have a passion to do this. We'll get into that. Let's take a look, though, real quick. I love humor. So let's start out with a little humor here. Okay. Got to get some enjoyment out of umpiring. Come on. Don't sleep on me now. Okay. So let's start this off right here with National Sports Association of Sports Officials released a survey detailing over 70% of the youth sports referees quit within 3 years of starting their career. Furthermore, 57% of those surveyed believed that sportsmanship was getting worse. Well, there is something enlightening. Like the whole world isn't crazier than, right? What we see on the streets reflects everywhere. So I asked the question to you guys. How many of you guys have been involved in something where you've had to eject a fan? Okay. How many of you guys have been approached after the game by people? How many of you felt threatened when you were approached after the game by people? How many of you guys went to a game manager or someone to tell them about it? Did they react to it? And how did they do it? They ejected the parent? How many didn't get any satisfaction? Okay. Do you think it's getting worse? Okay. So I talked to one of Vistelar's trainers, and one of the principals from Vistelar is here tonight, Gary Klugowitz, who was my mentor when I worked for Milwaukee Sheriffs as a trainer. But his daughter was a athlete, three-sport athlete at Beloit College. She went to Beloit College, right, Gary? Yeah, and she teaches and coaches in Rockford. And she had an incident happen recently, and I talked to her about it Saturday, in which this is a 12-year-old youth basketball game where you're on a court and all these different games are going on, right? You guys, any of you guys been there? If you haven't officiated, you've seen it. Okay. These are my kids. I followed them up. My son's 32 now. My daughter's 26. So I was a parent with kids in traveling ball, and they were athletes through college and yada, yada, yada. So I know exactly what that is. And Katie said the two officials, she'd had them before, and she goes, they're not very good, but they're there. But they're there. And they're getting they're just getting jumped on by some mother who's on and on and on and on, and finally it got so bad that the officials told the school principal, who was the game manager, told the coaches, and she was an assistant coach, Katie was, we're not going to do the second game. So they had a second game for the kids, a handful of kids that are like a B team on this sixth grade team. Okay? So these kids are looking to play. The officials wouldn't come out and do the second game because the coach did not get rid of the parent. And when Katie approached the principal and said, and called him by his name, because she obviously knew him because she teaches in the system, and says, why didn't you do it? Well, we agreed that she would just stand there and do X, Y, and Z, and they left. Now, who gets the shaft in this whole thing? Absolutely. She said the kids were crying. They're trying to explain this. Now, I got it. I understand why the officials left. They felt because the school didn't react to this. And they didn't react properly. And we're going to kind of talk about that. Because over the years that I've been teaching this program, I'm changing a little bit on what my focus and responsibility is of the people involved with the sports, everybody that are the stakeholders in these games. This just goes back that I wrote a book on this back in 2016. I didn't get rich on it, okay? But I wrote a book, and the book are really the tactics on how to do this, on how to manage conflict in athletics. Referee Magazine came into the Wisconsin Umpires Association just before the book was published right here and did an article on the training we were doing with Wisconsin Umpires Association where I would get new umpires, and some of you may have been in my class, for 50 or 55 minutes, and I would give you for 5 weeks training on this. But the thing is, here's what's so important. The training is not just sitting there and you listening to me. You had to get up and do it. Because this is a skill. You either learn it from the beginning or you were going to have made a lot of mistakes until you learned it. So for those of you that have been umpiring for years, did you make mistakes early on in your careers when it came to conflict management? Sure. And you had to learn it. And you had to learn it while you umpired. But it's a little bit more difficult now than when you started. Because the odds that you're going to be on a video are how high now? 100%. Right? Now you say something or do something inappropriate on that video, you aren't going to get that pass like we may have gotten 15 or 20 years ago. It's going to be right there. And it's going to be on YouTube. And it's going to be in Facebook, and it's going to be you. And you're going to look at it because you went and said something, okay, and you went, but I'm not really like that. People have to understand, but you know what? It's way too late. So it's so important that right now we get this to new umpires coming in, and I'm seeing more of that. Nick Spence, who many of you probably know, his wife Amy teaches at De-Escalate, and she runs a class, a physical education class, Introduction to Officiating, for her students. 3 years now I've been going in there to give this same program to these high school kids, because she's encouraging them to become officials. But now what we're doing, how many people told you how to manage conflict when you started officiating? I did, because if you came to the class, right, it happened. But how many of you really got that? And it's not something we're born with. It's not easy. It's not easy to have somebody bark at you, have somebody and so we have to get you into the right mindset to be able to have the confidence to say, I can handle this right now. And that's why you're here. And that's what I hope for you to get out of this. It's a safety issue. It's an issue for you to survive physically, to look good, your whole association, because you're all going to be, you're all here. Hey, these guys from Southeast Wisconsin Softball or WUA know what they're doing. They got training programs. Because how many people have you umpired with who just suck? Because there are umpires that aren't good, aren't there? There are officials that aren't good. So it's kind of a two-way street here. But we can control on our end through proper training and skill development. Basically, I've given this to Wisconsin umpires. For 3 years, I went out to the state of Washington, and I did their soccer camps. Through that, I got invited by Major League Soccer to come and do an in-season camp for Major League Soccer in Park City, Utah, where I was training soccer officials from all over the world. Learned a whole bunch of interesting things. New Jersey State Interscholastic Athletic Association, I've done 3 different things for Northern Illinois Athletic Association. So it's not just here, it's everywhere. And they're reaching out and everybody's looking for help. I umpired for 35 years. I umpired high school and college baseball. I did not do softball. I come from a very athletic family. I'm the middle of 5 boys. My dad was a coach and a teacher at Pulaski. He's in the Wisconsin Basketball Coaches Hall of Fame. My oldest brother coached basketball at Miami, Florida State, Central Florida, China, all over the world, and then he retired. And I have other brothers that have coached at Greenfield, Pius, New Berlin, Eisenhower. So very athletic family. Athletics is in our blood. My dad, through all the years he coached, I think he got 3 technical fouls in coaching 45 years of basketball. And every one of them were the official's fault. And my dad, why'd you get the technical? He goes, the guy wouldn't listen to me. He put his hand up in my face, told me to sit down. If I put my hand up in your face and told you to sit down, what do you think you'd do? Oh, you'd all sit down right away, wouldn't you? Right? You'd go, I'm sorry, I'm going to sit down. Right. Okay. It's all about respect. So understanding the consequences of what happens. This is my son. He hates officials. My kid hates umpires. It's so funny. I'll get text during a Brewer game, Dad, and I'll have to explain to him, Alex, for God's sakes, will you just stop? Okay? But you aren't responsible for the outcomes, but you're responsible for the process when this happens. Because who really chooses the outcome? The players and the coaches, whoever's the problem. But you can control how this happens. Because it's inevitable. These things are going to happen. Your goal is to manage this conflict, whatever happens during that game, so you can continue in the spirit of competition. That's what this is all about. I always try and center myself when I see all these things. I go, what are we really out there for? What are we really doing? I love baseball. I love athletics. I love it. And I refuse to let people's behavior make me not like it. So therefore, I'm going to learn how to handle this. It was just, what happened is I learned it through law enforcement. And the two got married into this program. And then the company Vistelar that I worked for asked me to write the book. And I wasn't the only one who wrote a book. There were other people. And I sat down, and it took me about 5 to 6 months. And I started thinking about things that happened to me during my career. The stories in my book are not made up, and there's many more. Because it's baseball. Weird things happen in baseball. So I sat down and I wrote the book. And again, the book is with the tactics. We handed out the cards. And if you take a look at this blue and with the different colors on it, this is basically chapter by chapter. You'll see in the book how this pans out. And there's a way in the book that you can teach this. Because again, it's skill development. In my classes at the WUA, you had to do ground rules. I made you get up and do ground rules. And say things to people. And today's society with younger people, what do they spend most of their time doing? Yes, texting and doing they're on the phone. Communication skills are dwindling. So we have to teach the skill. And there are some adults that don't realize that sometimes when they open their mouth, what's coming out is not what they think they're saying. And in conflict, it becomes even more important. Because when it comes out, you can't get that back. So you've got to script things. Do things happen to you the same a lot of times every game? They kind of complain about the same stuff, don't they? So script it. Come back with the scripts. We'll talk about that. This is where I'm changing my approach. Everybody hear the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to ensure sportsmanship now. When I first started this program, I wanted to really focus on umpires. And over the years, and it's been about 10 years now, I'm seeing that, and I've had people sit in these classes, athletic directors, administrators. Oh, yeah, you should come and talk to all of our, and they don't ever invite you back. If I teach you how to handle conflict, and it's not always de-escalation, you guys. It's not always de-escalation, because if you learn how to not escalate, we wouldn't have to de-escalate. Because there's some things people say that escalate people. Okay? So it's really, let's concentrate on that. But what about the people that have to handle when you turn around and go, that person needs to leave? or they see that. Now they're going to have to go up to an upset person and they're going to have that same skill. And they're going to have to realize in some instances we've seen violence in this area. Was the flag football game by South Stadium where the guy got killed? You know, the parents are out there battling. I'd be in my car just driving away. Be a good witness. Again, coaches play a role, players play a role, athletic directors play a role. School administrators, parents, spectators, game managers. I was asking Chris some questions about tournaments now and how they're going and what they're paying. You know, who's there, who's managing it. I'd familiarize myself with who's ever running a game or running that so you knew where, you know, who to go to if there was a problem. Because when you turn around and you cross that line, you are going into and you're engaging people, you're going into an unknown world. You didn't have ground rules with the people in the stands. You don't know what they're carrying and what they're not. You don't know what they do and what they don't. So be very careful. My rule to myself is I never dealt with fans. Never. I'd go to the coach or I'd find the game manager. And it had happened to me a couple of times. What's in it for you to be here, to listen to this? Do you want to look good wherever this incident ends up? Right? You want to look good. Remember, you can't control it, but you control the process. Do you want to choreograph what you say to avoid wishing a do-over? If somebody says something to you and you respond back and what you responded back made you feel good to say, probably wasn't the right thing to say. And now it's on video. And people see it. And do you think they're going to research what the whole incident was before they're going to make a judgment on you? No, not going to happen. Do you want to learn how to communicate concern with people? Communicate concern to enable you to develop a supportive atmosphere even in the most extreme conflict situations. Empathy, which we'll talk about many times. I have empathy for coaches. I have empathy for players. Sometimes you got to remember they're spending hours and hours and hours with these kids. And they're winning 7-1, 8-1. And then all of a sudden, the wheels start falling off the cart. Now it's 8-4. Now it's 8-5. The pitcher couldn't find the plate if you handed it to him. They're kicking the ball all over the infield, and then you get the close play. And now it's you. I always thought to myself, I got it. This poor guy, this poor gal. Okay? Empathy. Have some empathy of where it comes from. Your goal, disappear during the game. Try to generate collaboration. That's the greatest thing in the world we want. Get everybody out there to understand, I want to umpire this game. I want to be out of here with a nice, clean, crisp game. I want to officiate whatever sport you're in, get done with it. Even if there's conflict, if I handled it right, it's okay. Do it the right way because the critics are watching you. My daughter. Here's another story. So I'm doing Janesville, Craig, and Kimberly. On two things happened during this game. Janesville, Craig, and Kimberly, 2017 Division I final. I'm the crew chief. I was just telling Mike, they came in on the first night. We had the officials meeting, and Paul Feldhausen and Wade Lebecki told me, this guy over here says to me, we want him to do the Division II final behind the plate. I had never met this guy. I don't know who he is, okay? Before I sent out my email to my crew, I said, okay, we wear charcoal gray when we get up there on this day because we had a time we had to be up there. We're going to meet. We're going to have lunch. We're going to go walk through the field, take a look at the ground rules, blah, blah, blah. Well, dude doesn't do that. He doesn't meet us for lunch. He goes shopping with his wife, and he doesn't show up for anything. He comes to the umpires meeting. He sits down. I introduce myself. I'm Pete Jaskulski. And the first thing out of this guy's mouth, I did a minor league game last night for the Timber Rattlers. I looked at him and I went, did you just big league me? And he didn't know what to say. Right away, I thin sliced him, which means I took the first 15 seconds and I'm like, what? We get to do the game. He pulls his gear out of his bag. He had heather gray slacks and they were wrinkled. We came in, all our stuff's hanging, it's all creased and it's on because you do these games, you're on Fox Sports. And they mic'd me up for 2 games. Okay? So, and it's fun. It's really fun. It's a great experience. He got behind the plate in his game. I had my rotation, and it wasn't the final game. Lebecki and Feldhausen came into the umpire's room afterwards and said, we got to hide this guy. He's not going to be anywhere near. We got to do something with him. We had to hide him for the last game. We had to hide him somewhere on the field in a 4-man crew. So you never know, right? You don't know. But I tell that story because it's all about prepping yourself, being professional when you're out there. But we want everybody to work together. When you can't collaborate, you got to get cooperation. And in the end, we got to get compliance. And that's when things ratchet up. Because I'm not saying that everything is perfect and that it's all going to come out rosy. Gary has got a statement that de-escalation is it's a destination. What's the quote? Let me remember this. De-escalation is not always an outcome. It's just a tactic that we're using. Okay? Because to de-escalate a situation, you might have to do what with somebody? I'd have to eject him. He's gone. What did we just do? We de-escalated. Okay? Right? Now, I'm not going to come in here and tell you guys got to dump everybody. WUA back in the mid-2000s, they had a class on how to eject people. That's a great mindset to put into your head. Okay, we're going to teach you how to start dumping people. Okay, now, but it can happen. The ultimate goal is we want to set on this field the social contract. Now, I want you to follow me with this. We're having a hard time today in society with this. We're having a hard time in how we're going to deal with this in athletics. I'm the fire chief in Hales Corners. I retired from the sheriff's department after 25 years. And I was a paid-on-call firefighter for 43 years now. They brought me in 5 years ago to take the job full-time because we had issues on the department where a captain sexually harassed one of the firefighter members. The chief lied to Fire and Police Commission. They brought me in. They said I had retired from that job. They said, will you come back and take the chief's job? And I said, yes. And the first thing I did, you guys, is I interviewed my entire staff, 35 people. There were 5 full-timers, or 4 full-timers. We have more now, and 30 part-timers. And I sat them down, and we found out what happened. And then I got them in a room, and I put this up there. Same stuff. You are going to treat each other with respect. We're going to set a social contract in this fire department on how this is going to operate. Because if not, if you can't go by this, I'm going to eject you out of the job. So this isn't any earth-shattering thing. It's how you apply it to what we're doing. A voluntary agreement by everyone at this game to consistently treat each other with dignity by showing respect. Can you have conflict and still have respect? Absolutely. Absolutely, and that's what we should be doing. And I'm sure many of you youngsters in here are sitting here thinking about coaches and players and things where you have that going, or it's happened with you. I've stopped umpiring about 6 years ago. I've had discs put in my neck, and I can't, it's just, my kid, when my son started to play college ball, I backed out of it. I took the Chiefs job, he just didn't have the time. Okay, now I go to a lot of games. I'll go up to the Rock. I'll sit down, I'll watch you guys. You know, I'll sit what happens, and then I'll take notes. If you're lucky, you might end up in a picture in one of my programs. Hopefully it's a picture where your hands aren't in your pockets while you're standing out at second base, because if you do that, you're going to be in a picture. It's not going to be a good thing I'm going to put above that caption. Okay, but so I've been out of it a few years, but it doesn't change. It doesn't change. Where do we do this? We do it at ground rules. That's why I think it's so important when you get to the ground rules. Voluntary agreement between coaches, players, and umpires. Treat everyone with dignity by showing respect. Sportsmanship, this is what it's all about. Set up how you're going to handle the conflict. What word do you not think, what word should you not use a lot during ground rule? It's a very simple word. I am not going to. I would like this. I would. Because those coaches are going to walk away from that going, who's this all about? And what are you making it all about? You're making it all about you. We should use the word we. If you have a question or an issue, we will discuss it. You can call time. We will. I used to tell coaches, I will not argue from 90 feet away. I will not address you in these long conversations. If coaches wanted to come out and challenge my calls, I would always move and meet them. I'd meet them halfway. Andre Ghosh, who was the coach at Wisconsin Lutheran for years. He's a basketball official, very good one. And we had their schedule back when the Little 10 was around. You guys remember the Little 10? It'll date a lot of us, which was a while. Wisconsin Lutheran, Hartford, Oconomowoc, all those schools were in the Little 10. They play spring ball. Wisconsin Lutheran used McCarty Park, Zirkle Field. Okay? Everybody know who Zirkle is? Because if you don't, I am really old. Okay, so we're at Zirkle, it's April, and the wind is blowing in from outfield at about, because in April on a baseball field, everything comes off of Lake Michigan. The wind does not know how to blow from the west. So it comes off, and it's cold. It's really, really cold. I'm on the bases. Gary Kelkoff is my partner. He's behind the plate. Andre's on the end of two very close calls I make that he's not real happy. The second one's a double play. He's at third base, and I make the call. I'm in the B position, so it's out. Punch the guy out in a wagger at first base. I turn because I know he's not going to be. I turn to look. He comes at me. He takes 3 steps, and the wind blows his cap off. Okay? He stops. He picks his cap up. He runs some more, and it blows it off again. Right? Now I'm standing just like this, and I'm waiting. This is true. A third time, and his coat's blown off. He just went, and he went back to the dugout. After the game, we're in the parking lot, and he comes up, and Gary and I are laughing. We are laughing so hard, and he looks at me and he goes, I was so tired trying to get out to you, I couldn't run any farther. He goes, and I told him, Andre, it was the funniest thing I had ever seen. It was hilarious. Treat people with dignity by showing respect. Dignity is our inherent value. It's inherent that we have this. So see the world through the eyes of the players and coaches. Listen to them with all of your senses. We'll talk about how you do that. Listening. We want so badly to tell them how right we are that we don't take the time to listen. What's the opposite of listening? It's talking and us waiting to interrupt them so we can tell them how right we are. Take the time to listen. When appropriate, ask them things and explain why when you can. Sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes it's not. When appropriate, offer options. Let them choose how this is going to come out. And when appropriate, give them second chances and let them consider their options. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we get into what we call a persuasion sequence. This is one of my favorite videos of sportsmanship. This involves Jim Joyce and Armando Galarraga. When Galarraga he had a perfect game going, and you'll see it on the video. I met Jim Joyce because when I worked at Miller Park, when I retired from the sheriffs, my last 2 years of assignments, I ran security for the sheriffs at Miller Park. It was an awful job, people. When they had a day game, I'd leave my office. And if the Spanish-speaking TV people weren't there, I'd go up and sit in the booth and watch the day game because I had to watch what went on at Miller Park during the day. Okay. But I met Jim Joyce. He's a great guy. Very friendly guy, really nice guy. Some umpires were not that way. Angel, he was just like everybody said and you saw. He was something else. But let's listen to this one.
And we turn now and shift tones to the topic that, while it was nearly impossible to find any place where people weren't buzzing about it today, we are talking about the missed call in Detroit, denying pitcher Armando Galarraga a perfect game. Beyond the debate, should that call be overturned? Should baseball finally adopt instant replay? We saw something more important happening on the field, and here's John Berman with that. It was a bad call. Utter disbelief on the face of pitcher Armando Galarraga denied a perfect game, a feat accomplished by only 20 other pitchers ever. Denied because umpire Jim Joyce called the runner safe on what was clearly an out. You can see the tag on the bag well before the runner gets there. It would have been the last out. But while the call was extraordinarily bad, what followed was simply extraordinary. In a game of barrel chests and big tempers, umpire Jim Joyce apologized.
This is a history call, and I kicked it out of it. And there's nobody that feels worse than I do. And I took a perfect game away from that kid over there who worked his off all night.
And 28-year-old Galarraga, with every right to gripe, did everything he could to make Joyce feel better.
Well, no expect.
And at the game today, a moment of supreme sportsmanship. The two men at home plate. You could see Joyce wipe the tears from his eyes.
And from the fans, the support I got today was, I'll be honest with you, I missed it.
Baseball's commissioner said today there is no dispute that last night's game should have ended differently. And he promised to review expanding the use of instant replay in baseball. But he will not reverse the blown call. There's virtually no precedent for that in baseball.
This game will never be forgotten. This game will be talked about forever.
You might say that one man missed the chance to be perfect, but two men seized the chance to be good. And being good in life trumps being perfect in baseball. John Berman, ABC News, New York.
I get tears in my eyes. I get tears in my eyes when I see that. I literally do. Because it's just why we do this. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect, and this guy understood that. Now, If Jim Joyce had a history of being a dick, how do you think this would have ended up? A little bit different? It's going to be a lot more contentious. It's going to be a lot more different. So you develop that respect of other people. You can get, because everybody is, well, it's a two-way street respect. It's either personal or professional respect. I get personal respect from close friends of mine, people that were my mentors, people I work with. Professional respect is I earn it and I give it. And you have to earn it on that field by how you behave. And it starts from the minute you put the uniform on and you represent something. You represent yourself. You represent this organization. If you're going to be on video, who else are you going to represent? If something went really good and you did something good and it was on video, who would you want to see it? Wife, everybody, your family, your sister, your brother, your kids. If you do something horrible, who don't you want to see it? Same people. We forget that. It's easy to jump out. It's easy to go out after people. Was I always like that? No, I learned it. I learned it, and I learned that when I get respect, I get more out of people. Sometimes it became very tactical for me to do that because then I get better responses out of people, especially as a cop. Especially as a cop. I have a wonderful video that we always show when we do a law enforcement class of a Washington State trooper getting a guy hauling 20 pounds of marijuana in his trunk to voluntarily open up his trunk so he can search his trunk. You should see that video. Because he was just polite to the guy, and the guy just couldn't say no to this guy when he was done. He couldn't say no to him. Kevin Kihas, the coach at Pius. Okay? Kevin and I have known each other back when Kevin was playing. Kevin is sitting at Greendale with me watching a game back 10 years ago. My son was coaching at Greendale after he finished in college. And it's a Wednesday night. It's non-conference game night. And I got a lawn chair, and Kevin says, "Hey, Jazz, can I come sit next to you?" I said, "Sure." And he, after a couple innings, we're talking, and he says to me, "You know what? I've been a lot better this year." And I kind of chuckled, and I went, "Okay, I'll buy that. You have been." And he goes, "You taught me that." And I went, "Really?" He says, "Yep, because every time I came out on a call with you or during a game you did, you always listened to me. And you never talked over me. And you just listened. And when you talked, you were always like right there. Your voice was calm." And he goes, "And you would say things and I couldn't hear what you were saying. It's called reverse yelling. They're yelling at you and you start talking like this. And then you start repeating back what they say, and they're going to listen because nobody likes to hear more what you're saying to them than when you repeating it back to them." And he would calm down. He would calm down. And he goes, "It just changed how I looked at things." He goes, and then he looks at me and he goes, "Not to say I'm not coming out on you again." And I go, "I love it when you come out on me." I said, "It's fun. It's because I know." I said, "I know I'm right, Kevin. Most of the time you were wrong." And then we got into a real great discussion. We've remained really good friends since then. In the program, we teach this, the 6 C's of conflict management. 6 C's. The first is the context. We call this the blue brick road and the red brick road. We want to stay on this as much as we can, but sometimes it jumps over into the red bricks. The context is approach considerations, preparation. The goal is preparation. How do we prep ourselves to interact with these people we're going to have to interact with during this game, which are the coaches and the players? Ground rules that we've talked about already. How do you go out there and do it? Or when they come out, because this is going to happen several times during a game, when they come out on a call, how does this conversation start out? How do we open up what goes on? At the point of contact, after context, what's this is the point of engagement. Now we're right there. The goal here is non-escalation. We're going to break this down in a second. If everything goes right, you have closure. The encounter's over, they go back to the dugout, the game's finished, everybody leaves, we're all good, we didn't have a problem. This is the best outcome is the goal. We want the best outcome. But it could go to conflict. There's a disagreement, and you get resistance from someone. Because you made a call, you made a ruling. They don't like it, they got a question about it, something's going to happen. The goal is we want to resolve that, and this is where we want to do de-escalation. This may jump into a crisis. Their inability, I love this for coaches, their inability to cope, right? I had one time there was a sergeant that I worked with, we had a slide in a training program, define crisis. What's a crisis? And her answer was, it was a crisis in their minds. Everybody's got a different level of what is a crisis. You punch that runner out of first base in a tie game in which the runner from third could score, they're going to have a crisis. They're going to have a crisis because right away it's going to be, oh! Right? Everybody's going to have the, oh! I've seen umpires react to the, oh! And turn and look into the crowd. My girls' softball game at Wick Field in fall ball. The guy yelled right over me to the crowd, and I'm sitting in a lawn chair. I said, hey, because he was yelling right over me. I go, quit, you're spitting on me. Quit yelling over me. I go, and it was a close call. He looks at me and he says, well, you want to come out here? You know what I did? Got up out of the chair. I said, give me your indicator. Let's go. I talked to him later. We had a 15-minute conversation later. I said, don't say that to somebody unless you understand what they're going to do. And I big leagued the guy. Hey, this is what I do for a living. Oh, I'm sorry. I said, it's okay. But don't waste your time when they're going, oh. Everybody's excited about that. Would you like umpiring a game where there was no noise? Really? Where there was no, they did in South Carolina. They have soccer leagues. I read this the other day when I was doing some research to update myself on some stuff. They have soccer leagues that are silent soccer leagues. Where everybody's got to be quiet. And you can't, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. That's no fun.
How old are the players?
What's that?
How old are the players?
The players, it's youth. It's youth soccer. It's the parent thing in youth soccer that, everybody gets all riled up. And then from crisis, it may lead to combat. The aggression, violence, our goal right now is your physical safety. And some of these courses, we didn't teach a lot of it. I'm teaching more of this on how to avoid this because of just what we're seeing. Some simple things on how, Jack Hoban, who was a consultant with Vistelar, with a company who runs a group called Resolution Group International, New Jersey, says if you don't want to get hit, don't be there. It's a simple thing, right? Be tactical. Don't be there if you don't want to get hit. Don't be there. Don't put your face right here. Here's one of the things I had. Major League Soccer brought me in to do this camp for this reason. Paul Rozier, who was, any of you guys play soccer, officiate soccer? Have kids that do? Okay, Paul Rozier, pro referee, manages the Major League Soccer officials. They're out of New York City. Paul was the head of the Premier League officials in Great Britain, London. Now my kids played club soccer for Polonia and Croatia, and my daughter played a lot, my son played a lot. My daughter's a huge Premier League fan, Chelsea's her team. I watch every Saturday. I watch it now. I never played soccer. I have an appreciation for soccer. I really do. I traveled with her to North Carolina to watch Wrexham, which is the team owned by Rob McElhaney and Ryan Reynolds, play Chelsea. And it was 97 degrees out in July in North Carolina. Do you know how much a father has to love their daughter to do that at 61 years old? God, it was hot. But, so I've learned this. Well, Paul and I, after he heard me speak, the second year I was in Washington, he did a thing, then he came to me and he said, let's go have a cocktail. We went and had a cocktail. He said, we talked for like a half, he goes, I'm going to fly you out to Park City, Utah next month. And we got a hold of Vistelar and my bosses, and they sent me out there. Their issue was there was too much of their officials getting bullied on the field, on the pitch. Too much bullying going on, and they were taking it, and they weren't managing the game. And there was a guy from the Seattle Sounders. He ripped out of the official's pocket his cards and tore them up in front of him. I had a conversation on the side with that official. He pulled me aside after I spoke to them at a breakfast meeting in the morning. And he said, can we sit down and look at this on video? I want to talk to you about this. And we worked out how this shouldn't have happened. By positioning, recognizing what was going on, movement, and he got it. But they said they were losing, MLS was losing viewership. And most of the teams were owned by NFL owners. They were losing viewership because of the behavior. And they wanted their officials to learn. One of the sideline officials wrote the foreword to my book. We got that tight with them. And I watched him do a training session. It was fascinating to do it, but you can do it. You can get it done. And I'm talking to guys from Poland, South America, and they get it. They get it because it's things they understand it because what we teach transitions, all languages and everything. It's just smart stuff. But now we're seeing we got to protect you. So we're going to teach you how not to be there, how to recognize and what smart things you should be doing. So you have this card, and we're going to quickly go through this in the next half hour or so. Non-escalation and de-escalation. Remember, if we concentrate on not escalating, we don't have to de-escalate. We're going to treat people with dignity by showing them respect. We want to be alert and decisive when we officiate, and we want to respond and not react. And I know when we train we train umpires, we always say pause, read, and react. We need to change that. Pause, read, and respond. Because react means you didn't know what was going to happen. Respond means you got a planned response. You saw what it was, you're ready to go. Then we'll talk about showtime, how to get yourself mentally prepared. This is what's going to get you from getting your butt kicked. Proxemics. How to open up your universal greeting, how to listen real quick, how to redirect that bad behavior when they call you a name. How to persuade people. Crisis intervention, we'll talk about it a little bit. And then how to take appropriate action. And in the end, closure. How do you debrief these? Okay? It's all about the green card. Treat people right. This is on the green card. That's the universal greeting. We'll talk about it. How to de-escalate. We'll get into that in a second. Remain alert on the field. Respond, don't react. Be decisive. Have a response. Does that dude look like he's ready? I'm sitting right here, by the way, in a lawn chair on this one. Click. He sucked during the whole tournament. He was terrible. He never ran from point A to point B in the 3 games I saw him umpire. Not once. And I'm going to admit this, because my wife yelled at me. Okay? About the third game, I went, please run once. Once. And then I got, shh, you're embarrassing me. I go, that's why we got married. Okay. Because really, think about this. This is how I look at it. If your kids played these sports or you've been in it, did you pay money for them to be in there? Yeah. Did they work hard? Right? Coaches they're out there working hard. They want to play at a higher level somewhere. Where if you play in college, no matter what division, you've really accomplished something and it's great. Okay? And we're going to go out there and milk the money out of this and be like that? You ought to be embarrassed. You're stealing from them. He's stealing money out of people's pockets. That's my philosophy with that. That's why just get yourself ready and go. At least hustle. You look good and hustle, you can get away with a lot of stuff. I did it for many years. Self-reflection. How to handle this stuff that comes in. You got to self-reflect. We want you to maintain your emotional equilibrium. Maintain that professional face. Address the words, descriptions, or phrases that would trigger a negative response from you. So you got to own that. What is that gets you PO'd? Construct professional responses designed to generate collaboration, cooperation, or compliance. Showtime. Looking good. Getting yourself mentally prepared. This is a 6-step process. Stacking up your blocks. We'll talk about it in a second. Say showtime to yourself. Say something like, here we go, I'm ready. Breathe in, pause, breathe out. Put your professional face on. Use the appropriate positive self-talk. Then step into that arena. Now, you got pre-games with your partner? Right? Don't tell me you're that one that shows up 5 minutes before the game where I'm looking in the parking lot to see whether or not I'm going to have a partner. Because you should be there. You should be having a pregame. And you should be talking about who's doing what. Nothing's more fun than working a 3-man system. 3-person system umpiring. Because you got to stay on your toes and know what cues and where you're going. But we talk about it during the game. So that you know what's going on. This is where you start to get your head in the game. Did you have a bad day at work today and now you're going to the ballpark? I would leave many times being the operation captains at the Milwaukee County Jail, getting off my shift at 3:30 or 4 and having to drive out to Heartland Arrowhead to hear Timmy O'Driscoll at Heartland Arrowhead, and I love Timmy like a brother. You know, doing a high school game between Waukesha West, and I'd have to get myself out of the jail and into the ballpark. That's mental conditioning. When I step in the line, I'm ready to go. Stacking up your blocks, this is it. You ground your feet in, basically. This is a classroom model. 4 to 6 inches apart, drive them into the ground, relax. Okay? Pelvis, tuck your butt in, drive your navel through your thoracic back. Take a deep breath, raise your rib cage off your pelvis. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Hold it in. And drive your scapula down. This was Andrew Garrison, who was one of our consultants, played football at the University of New Mexico, was a safety, played there. This is why we do this. It's an article from the Association for Psychological Science. It's called power posing. Brief nonverbal displays affect neuroendocrine levels and risk tolerance. Your testosterone goes up and your cortisol goes down. Your cortisol is your stress hormone, which will go up in these. What you're doing is you're driving it down and out. By simply changing your physical posture, an individual prepares themselves to endure stressful situations, perhaps improve their confidence and their performance. So how does this attribute to officiating? What does this mean? This means before the game, ready to go. I don't sit in the other team's dugout. Okay? I watch them do infield and outfield, and I time it. And when they're going into the dugout, because I don't want anybody on the field, they shouldn't be on the field, then you walk in, and you walk in with your partner, because they're all doing this when they see you. Who's coming? If you have mustard on your shirt, you look like you just wiped a Big Mac all over you. You're wrinkled or you ever. What do you think they think about you? They think you're a goof. You're not going to get that from the beginning. There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell. It's called Blink. He talks about thin slicing. The first 30 to 40 seconds if somebody meets you, they're thin slicing you by what they look and they see. Now you come in looking like the picture I saw at the umpires, and you're creased, you're looking good, you're walking in with your partner, you're coming in at the time, you walk through. Instead of sitting and getting off the bench, you go, oh, ground rules, let's go. You get in there, and you start your ground rules. Look like you know what you're doing. They're going to react to you that way. I think it's extremely important. Proxemics, this is really important. Now you're going to have the interaction. You're making contact with people. Let's say ground rules is over, but now something happens where coaches come out. You have to regather yourself and get yourself ready again. Because you can't stay in this stance for 6 innings or 7 innings or 9 innings, whatever level you're doing at baseball or whatever. You can't stay in there 6 feet apart like this all the time. But if a coach would come out and I knew they were coming out, I would get into it. I'd walk toward them, I'd stop. My hands would always go here. And I would, here we go. And then they come in and the first thing that came out of my coach, what do you got, coach? And then they'd start spinning in circles around you. Right? And doing whatever they got to do. And you just, right? Now, if I felt threatened, which most of the time I'm fortunate enough, where in my college and high school days, I was not threatened by baseball coaches, but if you're doing rec leagues or doing some other things, just put your hands here. Don't stand like this. Okay? Right? But here, just have your hands here. And talk. But listen first. But what do the distances mean? 10-5-2, Dave Young, the head of training for Vistelar. The 10-5-2 rule. At 10 feet, Mike, can I use you? Stay right there. This is about 10 feet. 10 feet. I'm evaluating. As they're coming out, I'm evaluating how this is going to be. Right away, I'm looking. I may have to make, if he keeps coming and coming, I might have to exit. This is how many years in law enforcement I never got punched in the face. Because I had great instructors sitting over there. We teach this. This is one of the greatest things we teach police. Be ready. Just be ready. Okay? Now I'm going to make a decision. We can communicate because the coach is going to come. We're going to get it 5 feet. So he comes into 5. This is usually where communication starts to take place. This isn't static. It's dynamic. So if he starts to move a little bit, like just take a step forward. What'd you see me do? I'm maintaining that. I'm maintaining that. Now, if he's calm or he's just a little agitated or you know who he is and you know, it's okay. We can talk. We can talk from here. If it gets to 2 feet, this is not, either people operate within this distance. If I'm a nurse or a doctor or an EMT, I got to do it. If I'm handcuffing somebody, I got to do it. You shouldn't need to be in here because this usually means what's going to start going on. Right. You're going to get the barking going on. Okay? That's operation and you may need to escape out of this. Okay? 10-5-2. But it's always distance. If he keeps moving, okay, we're going to go. Now, if I want to stop him, Okay? We have a universal stop sign. So if Mike's coming in and he starts coming in, hey, hang on, coach. What'd you see me do? My hand came out. Everybody understands this, right? If he continues to do more, and as I'm doing it, I'm maintaining the 5. So he continues to do more, what am I going to do? Hey, hang on, coach. Coach, hang on. We can talk. I got it. You didn't like the call. Let's talk. If he continues to move in, where are my hands? Protecting myself. So I can do what? Escape. Okay? If you want to escort a coach off the field, should you go like this? Come on, coach, we got to go. You're out. No. What you want to do, we call it guiding hands. Coach, let's go. We need you off the field. And you go, come on, we're going that way. He starts walking, and you just guide, and you stay, and let him go. Say what you want as long as you do what I say. You know, I'm going to win. Do we really ever lose? No. Okay? Thanks, Mike. So let's look at, and you don't touch them. Don't touch them. The bomb squad, when I was a captain at the airport for the sheriffs after 9/11, the bomb squad and the bomb dogs were under my command. The big saying they used to have on a plaque, touching triggers tragedy. Don't touch people. Only if you're defending, like you got to keep them off you to move them off you, but don't touch people. What are some of the basic threat indicators to tell you that what the communications that you're doing right now are breaking down and your personal safety might be compromised right now? Inability to manage that distance I just showed you. If I can't manage it with some of the stuff I showed you, now in my classes, we go out in the gym at the Whitnell Middle School and we do this. They get out, they get into groups. We have little safety officers and they do this, and I make the adults and the kids do it so they understand what this is. If you can't control the position that you're in, it's a problem. You're probably going to have something physical happen. Monitoring the tone of voice, excessively repeating. They're getting louder and they're saying the same thing. That means they ain't getting it. Communication's not taking place. The two-way street, it's only one way right now. Watch the hand movement and watch their eyes. I have a video of a minor, I don't have time to show it, of a minor league, Steve, you see, a minor league umpire down in Venezuela. Get right up in me. Put your arms like that. Right like this with the coach. And I break the video down and you can see the coach go, boom. Jose Offerman was the coach. Knocked him down. Punched him. You should never be there. You don't want to get hit, don't be there. So now, distances are all set. When you do ground rules, where does the home plate umpire face? Out toward the field. Where can your partner be? Right, facing you. Right, straight here. Where are the coaches? And I know in softball they like to bring everybody out on the field. Okay. Because they bring the kids and they bring their grandma and grandpa and everybody else, and it's okay. It's the one difference in baseball, you just get players. Well, in baseball, you get the coach. Yeah. It comes out. If I get multiple coaches and I always identify the one that we will talk to. Doesn't mean that the guy coaching first base, you can't have a conversation with him if you're out there or something happens. But on a dispute, you should only have to talk to one. Soccer has changed this in the last 3 years, and they're getting more, and they actually published a thing FIFA did. Only one guy gets to go with the official. Now, they're not getting there quite there yet, but when you watch the Premier League, you go after an official, they yellow card you like right away. They'll pull them out, bang, and they get 2 or 3, and they're out the next game. Called accountability. It's like the NCAA ejection rule, which has been around forever in college for 15, 20 years. You get ejected for a game, you lose 3.
One question.
Yes.
When you talk about these attacks or potential attacks, can you de-escalate that by ejecting the guy before it gets to that?
What if he don't want to go? What if he doesn't? What if he don't want to go?
Pardon me?
You're assuming he's going to leave.
Well, I mean,
You're assuming the guy. What's your first name?
okay, so if the high school game,
Yeah.
you have to get the athletic director to deal with that situation.
I agree.
But the point is, why do you let it get to that?
You don't.
But that's my point. So
You don't.
we should never get to the point where those incidences occur. We shouldn't have to deal with that. In fact, if we get to that point, we're not doing our job.
I agree with you because in one of the classes, a guy made a comment to me, and you'll agree with this. Well, if I've been listening to him for 4 innings and then it comes to the 4th inning, and my response to him was, why were you listening to him for 4 innings? Why weren't you addressing, and we'll talk about that in a second, how to shut that down right away? What I'm telling you is that there are things happening today where people are getting hit, and they're not getting hit because they didn't eject them. Okay? I do agree with you with this. I've seen some football things happen where officials have been punched, and then I've done research on them and found out that it's the 4th quarter and things were happening all game, and nobody was flagging them.
That's the umpires. That's the official.
That's the official's fault, so they should stop that. So you are correct. You're 100% correct. But what if they don't? Or what if they come out or they want to bump? Because they'll bump. They think bumping. Now, bumping's gone away in baseball. Earl Weaver was one of the greatest baseball bumpers there ever was.
I mean, the guy won't leave before 50 games.
I got it, but here's what I'm saying is we tell people to not rob banks. There's laws. What do they still do? So what? It's a.
This is baseball. This is not talking about being a police officer or firefighter.
You don't think people have been punched in baseball games?
How often is that? I mean, I don't know. How often is that happening in my lifetime? Growing up and watching.
Carroll College, Carroll University. Right? How long ago was that? 8 years ago? 8, 9 years ago, a brother of the coach punches the umpire coming out of the dugout. But rareness, what's your first name? Ken. Rareness. If I punch you and you lose your eyesight, how rare is that going to be to you? It's going to be terrible. I know what you're saying. High risk, low frequency of it happening. But with that high risk, we're trying to protect you. I'm not trying to portray, I'm the last guy that's going to do that, that's going to portray that you can't do athletics because it's becoming so violent. What I'm saying is that people react to these distances, and they react to what goes on. Manage the distance. This, getting punched, or in this, is the greatest. I hope it never happens to you. It'll be rare, but we're seeing it more. We're seeing it more. And what you're saying is correct. You can forfeit games, you can get out of there, you can do it, but you have to recognize that that's going to happen. Presuming compliance with very angry people can be fatal at times. That's why you look at, it's very tactical to be nice, and we'll talk about that in a second, on how you being professional is helping you be tactical. Because if you're being nice and you're being this way and they're ramping up, you're going to start thinking in the back of your head, why are they doing this when I'm being, and that should be a sign that there are people out there whose emotional equilibrium aren't there. And that's what I'm trying to say. So I do acknowledge what you're saying, believe me. But it's a resort to protect yourself. So your ground rules is your initial contact with the players. Remember this. Think about how much time you could save if you spent more time on non-escalation versus working on de-escalation tactics. If we don't have it happen, we don't have to worry about it. So ground rules, you have an appropriate greeting, coaches, players. Good afternoon, everybody. Ground rules, okay? How's everybody doing? Ground rules. Introduce yourself. I'm so-and-so, if they don't know who you are, and introduce yourself to the players and your partner. Explain the reason for contact. Well, we're here for ground rules. You're opening up a conversation. Ask a relevant question. What's a good relevant question to ask if you're officiating in a game at ground rules? Are all your players properly equipped, everybody? Coaches, can I have the lineup card? Okay? Instead of just busting into a conversation where they all stand there and you're, okay, ground rules. This is how to play, that's how to play, that's it. You're opening up a conversation with somebody. This comes from traffic stops for law enforcement. I come up to your car. Good afternoon, sir. My name is Deputy Jaskulski. I'm from Milwaukee Sheriff's Department. The reason I stopped you is because, can I see your driver's license? 4 things. Now, you can do this anywhere. You can apply this to anything, how to open up a conversation. For the entire ground rule, it would look like that. So the students I would have would get a script, they'd do this whole thing. And then they'd rotate. Everybody would have to do it. Because we're teaching these young kids how to umpire, and we got to teach them how to speak to people. Especially when they're going to have to umpire and they're adults, because some adults see blood in the water when these kids get out there and start swimming after them like sharks. I've seen it. It's kind of pathetic sometimes. Universal greeting benefits. Why do we do this? It's professional, pleasant, and tactical. Creates a reasonable doubt in the person's mind you ain't a jerk. Hey, this guy's professional. He's all right. Test the waters. Don't start a negative dance right away. I'm going to call pitches here. I don't want your catcher doing this. You're starting a negative dance when you start doing that. And if you're nice and they are grumpy, you're getting a pretty good idea what the next hour and a half might be like. They're unhappy about something. Non-escalation versus a de-escalative emphasis by using that tactic. And you're modeling calmness for people. Set the tone for how questions and disputes may be handled. You could be modeling a concept that they may never have experienced in your life. You may get people you get people from all walks of life who do all different things who all come up. Model the calmness. Model it. Enjoy yourself. I miss umpiring. I miss it. I miss when all the hand signals the catchers started to come out with the stuff on their arms. And then the coaches started to yell, 5-3-2, 2-4-3. And we'd look at Chaz Montez from Waukesha West, who I love Chad. I respect him as a coach. And Gary Kelkoff and I would look at him, and he'd come after the game. He'd walk up. We'd go, 2-5-4, 6-3-2. And then he'd just start laughing. He'd go, and then they stopped doing it because it was too much for the kids to figure out. Instead of the indicator, we had to, what? Is he still doing it? Love it. You could change a defensive atmosphere to a supportive one by just being that way. Because you may have coaches who are very defensive with officials. Ran into this in the state tournament with the Sun Prairie coach. We were told later after the game he was put on double secret animal house probation. And then they told us after the game, good coach. I ended up having him several times later in the tournaments. We had a mutual respect in how we handled the games, but second pitch of the game, he challenged a check swing. Second pitch of the game, he challenged it. And right away that told me, oh boy, I got to be really, really on my P's and Q's because this is going to be, he's going to be edgy. You begin to look good wherever this is going to end up now when you start it right from the beginning. Beyond active listening, when they're talking to you, clarify what you're hearing. Paraphrase things back to them. They like to hear that, especially if they're upset, so that you understand what's going on. If they come out to challenge a rule, make sure reflect on it by talking about it. At times, mirror what they're doing, what they're saying. I understand you're upset about this. I hear what you're saying. Advocate for them. We want to get this right. Let me talk to my partner. And then in the end, summarize whatever it is. Okay, coach, here's what we got here, blah, blah, blah. We're good. We need to get back to the game. Let's get going. So everybody understands how we finish that. Convey empathy. Acknowledge their perspective. They want to be heard. Interpret, understand what they are saying. Respond to what they are saying. Whitefish Bay and Homestead. Ernie Millard and Woj over at Whitefish Bay. Whitefish Bay and Homestead at the ground rules are talking about, Ernie's talking about how they can't score runs in games. Okay, during ground rules, this is the conversation. It's me and Dan DeReamer doing the game. And it's a good game. We're at Whitefish Bay, and it's like 4-1, or no, it was 2-1. It was very low score. We're in the 4th or 5th inning, and Homestead is hitting. I got the plate. There's runners on first and second. There's a line drive hit by a right-handed hitter, and it's going off the bat. It's tailing. So if you're looking down the right field line, he hits a shot, and it's going like this. Now, runners on first and second, I got to stay there. Okay? DeReamer's in the C position because I may have runners coming, but I got to make this call because it's going down the line. So I position myself about 5 feet in front of the plate, and I'm sitting on that line. The right fielder is about 6'4", 6'5". He ended up getting a scholarship to play at Notre Dame. He was a freshman. He starts from right field, the ball's tailing, and he takes a line right on the line. And he's trying to overhead right on the line. I cannot see the line beyond him. And the ball, things start slowing. Right. And they're going, and I'm looking, and that ball comes down, and it hits. Don't see it hit, but it took I'm guessing, 50-50. It hits, takes a one hop, goes out of play over the right field fence. So hits, bounces, one hop, out of play over the right field fence. I come up, emphatic, foul, foul. The right fielder goes, what does that say? Okay, what does everybody in the park now think? They think fair ball. The love was flowing on me. And if you've been to this field, they're right here. I could feel the breath. Ernie comes down the line. He comes down the line, and I know I'm going to get it. So I take my mask off, and I go up the third base line, and I stop. He comes out, and he's circling. And he's just, oh my God, I can't. He could not complete a sentence. He was so upset. Oh, Jason, that ball was, you can't, how can you make that call? He put his hands up. That ball was, and I let him go. And I just started to talk, and I said, Ernie, and I'm standing there with my mask, and my hands on my hip, I got my head down. I'm going, Ernie, give me a chance to explain. Let me explain. It took about 15 seconds, and he started to calm down, but he was still just, and I said, Ernie, I could not see, and I'm explaining why. The kid's right on the line. I took a guess. It's 50-50. I don't know what to tell you. And he points at DeReamer. Oh, he could have. I go, Ernie, he can't make that call. I can't go to him. I can't do what he did in the first and go, hey, Dan, what do you got? Right? And Dan's sitting at an angle from, right? Although after the game, Dan looks at me, and as we're walking out, he goes, oh, I thought it was fair. So I stopped. I said this, and he stopped, so I knew I had him. So he stopped, and he put his head down, and his hat's on his side. And he's like, oh, jeez. And he goes back to third base. I go back behind the plate. The kid's got to come back to hit. And I'm back behind the plate, and guess what I'm doing? Please, God of baseball, let this kid get a hit. Please let him get a hit, get at least one run to score. Please, God, please. And they don't. and they don't score, and they don't. So the inning ends, and I'm on the right field line because I always go opposite where the pitcher comes off. He's coming across. I'm standing. He's going to his dugout. 5 warm-up pitches. We go back. I dust off the plate. He comes out of the dugout about 5 feet, and he leans over. He doesn't look at me, but he goes, Jazz, I got a parent sitting down the right field line. He said it was fouled by about 6 inches. And he goes back into the dugout. And I went, thank you, Ernie. Thank you. Could you now please go into the stands and announce this to everybody else that, right? And the reason I tell this story is that it is all about, you got to listen to what they're saying, admit it. It came out on my side. It's not that I was I was rolling the dice and I got it. I put it in the book. I asked him, later on, and before I put it in the book, we were at Homestead doing a regional, and I mentioned it to him, and he goes, so I'm going to put, he goes, what are you talking about? He goes, I don't remember that. And then I started telling him, he goes, that's right. These guys don't remember all that. The good ones don't, it was just part of Wachinski was sitting over there just laughing. Because he told me that later. He goes, that was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. I go, did you see it? He goes, yeah. He goes, I was prepared to come out on you if you would have called it fair. He says that was just how it was going to be. How to redirect this. If you have a natural reaction, it's going to lead to confrontation. So remember, if it feels good to say it, it's probably not the right thing to say. We want to deflect and redirect what they're saying, which is planning it, okay? I hear what you're saying, I got that, coach, but here's what we had. Okay? I understand you're angry. Hey, I told Ernie I'd be out here. I said it to Ernie. I think this was got him to stop. I'd be out here too. But he never got to a point where I would have to eject him. I've had people say, I shouldn't. If you're going to be that way, don't umpire. Don't umpire, don't be a cop, if you're going to be that rigid. He gets to say what he can say. Why? Where do we live in this country? We cherish what? Free speech, remember? 4 great American questions. First one is why? Why? Second one is, who are you? Where do you get your authority? And what's in it for me? That's how people are. We got to go beyond that. By doing these tactics, you help answer all those questions. Address those triggers. Remember, we want this, emotional equilibrium. You're probably being filled. Put yourself in their shoes. Define those things that get you upset. Consider who you represent with how your response comes out. Reasons for deflectors, it allows you to feel good. It can disempower that person that you're talking to, and it sounds good. This would be a redirection. The coach yells out, where was that pitch? Those pitches are strikes. Now, you can go like this from 10 feet away. We all love this, right? This or that. We all love the parental finger. Or you can respond, and I usually would just stand, and I would look, and I go, Coach, I heard what you said. I'm working hard back here. We're working it, but we can't argue balls and strikes. There's Ken, for you, I'm stopping it right there. Now, the next time it happens, I told you in the first inning, Coach. Okay, now I'm going to make a decision based on what I'm going to do with them. Because the WIA allows you to do lots of things. Issue a warning. That was my warning. Restrict them to the bench. Take the cancer and put them on the bench. Well, that's great. So now they can sit on the bench and talk to everybody about how I never restricted anybody to the bench. You either got that warning from me or if it got so bad you were going. It didn't make any sense to me. But I heard you, Coach. You didn't like the call. We're not here to discuss balls and strikes. I'm working hard. I've sat behind there where a pitch has come and I might have missed it. And if the coach says something, I'd go, and they got it. That's my signal I kick the pitch. Because sometimes it happens. It happens. My daughter at the Janesville Craig Kimberly game, I'm on TV. And I get it's a great high school baseball game. Wonderful. The Fox City Stadium is full. You guys, if you ever get to experience that and go there, it is super. And they got me mic'd up. We had one play on a foul ball where my partner made a call. He was a college umpire, very good one too. And it was very close. And it was over the bag call, and the coach from Craig came out, and he comes out and he says, "What do you got?" And he looks at me, and I go, "That's his call." He goes down, he talks to him. It's very respectful. He comes back. He looks at me. He puts his arm around me, and he goes, "You wouldn't happen to want to overrule that one." And I just busted out laughing. He goes, "I had to ask." He goes, "I had to ask." And he just laughed going to the dugout. But my daughter's watching this game, and I got a kid gets up. He was a second baseman for Kimberly. The kid's hitting like .096. Okay. Janesville Craig brings their catcher in. It's a one-run game. The catcher comes in the seventh inning, and he's throwing 95. But he's throwing like this. And it's just, the kid behind the plate is back there going, bang, 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 and it's boom, boom. Right? This kid gets up with 2 outs, and he's going to bunt with a runner on first. With 2 outs. Okay? The pitch is this far off the plate in the demilitarized zone, and I punch him out. Game ends. I drive home 2.5 hours later, 3 hours later. I come into the house. My daughter has it frozen on the TV, going, "How could you do that to that kid? Dad, that pitch was outside." And then I got to explain to her, "Honey, this kid's painting. You don't go up." I mean, it's the benefit of the doubt. Off the plate, 2 inches demilitarized. Boom. Sorry. Swing the bat.
Did you keep the 5-foot distance between her and you?
With my daughter, it was so funny. I couldn't believe she did it. After, I just was laughing, and she was serious. "Oh, I can't believe, that poor kid." And I go, "Honey, he's becoming a better person because I punched him out, believe me." Okay. Persuasion sequence. Now the redirection. You've stopped that. We're going to have a conversation. You got to persuade the coach. When you ask the player or coach to do something and they ask you, or they question you, they become resistant or refuse. Explain why to them. This is why. And it's that simple. Why do we make a call at first when the swipe tag comes, or he comes off the base, or why do we go he's off the base? Because it's your answer to why. They're going to ask you the question. Don't wait for him to come out. Tell them right away. Safe, off the base. You just answered it. Okay? But you're going to have to at times explain why. That's showing respect to them. Offer options, let them choose. Okay? Coach, here's what happened. All right? I told you what happened. We put in the context. He's off the base. You listen to what they say. Let's get going. This is a great game. Need you back in the dugout. Give them an opportunity to reconsider what's going on. So the reason, ask them if they understand, give them good options. Get back in the dugout. Let's get going. Then give them the bad option. "Coach, I don't want to have to dump you. Hope you would work with me here." Follow with negative options. Never give the negatives first. Always good, then negative. Because if you give the negative first, what are they never going to listen to? Nothing else. Give them the good one. And then followed by I'd hope, "Coach, I don't want to have to dump you. I'd hope you work with me here. This is a great game. Let's just get going here." And let them go. Give them an opportunity to reconsider. And then if necessary, if they don't get it and they're still going, take appropriate action. Telling them to get back in the dugout 3 times is not giving them an opportunity. It's progress. You want to progress. "Coach, I got it. I explained to you why we made that call. But we need to get the game going. I need you to go back into the dugout." If you don't, I'm going to have to dump you. I don't want to have to do that. Work with me here. Go back to the dugout. I'm not blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now I'm going to eject you. Because you're going to have to write a report. What did you do? You just wrote your report and what you explained to them. And then you take whatever action you're going to take. When do you take action? That's when the sequence didn't work, like I just explained. They're not getting it. Or you don't have to sit there and talk if it's this. Clear safety concern to justify taking action. You had fighting on the field, body contact, throwing objects, kicking dirt. Then we don't ask you to go through the persuasion sequence, you just eject. Simple. I didn't have many ejections. I had 2 or 3 in college, and I had a couple in high school. The last kid I had in high school, I punched him out in McGuanago on some pitches with bases loaded, and the kid just took a pitch, and he just put the bat in the dirt, and he went, that shit. And my ejection was, okay, son, go back in the dugout, put the bat in the rack, put your hat on, don't get your glove because you're not coming out. That was my ejection. The coach came down the line and he goes, what happened? And I told him what he said. He goes, okay, number 12 in the 8th spot for number 5. Get back in the dugout. And you're done. Nobody knew I ejected him. Parents came later down at McGuanago, way down. We used to park way down in the end. And they wanted to, and I saw him coming, and I sized him up. Believe me, I did. I sized him up. I was with a young umpire, and the parent stopped and said, can I talk to you? I said, sure. And we talked. He goes, what did you? I said, I ejected him. And here's why. He goes, none of us in the stands could hear anything or no. I go, good. Good. You saw that he didn't come. We figured he didn't come out of the dugout. He said something you didn't like. I said, no, I didn't like it. So, persuasion sequence, again, if it doesn't work, safety concerns, you're going to throw them out. How do you take action? Verbal warning, written warning, restriction of the bench, ejection. It's whatever you choose. It's funny because the story about fighting and things that happen on the field, we had, and I just thought about this because you brought that up. I did the Oshkosh Whitewater game where both benches emptied. There were on video, there were 42 people fighting on the field. Me and Steve Reinhardt did UW Oshkosh, UW Whitewater. It was April 1st in 2004. It was the first Saturday in April. I'll never forget it. Both of them were ranked in Division III in the top 4. Oshkosh was getting lit up in this doubleheader, and I had the second game. And it came out of the blue. And Doug Henry was the pitching coach for Whitewater. He used to pitch for the Brewers. He punched the statistician from Oshkosh in the nose and broke his nose, and they called the police and didn't want us to start the game again. It was the most frustrating thing I'd ever seen. I was a captain at the sheriff's office at the time, and we were going to do a presidential motorcade for the vice president in the 2004 election on that Tuesday. I was getting phone calls from the media and all these people, and and I told the officer from UW Oshkosh was in one of my instructor schools. She came to talk to me. She knew who I was. I said, don't bring the police on the field. But we saw it happen. I did not go in there to break anybody up. I went back to the fence, and I was reaching for my gun and my taser, and I was realizing I didn't have it. So it was really, and I'll never forget that. I mean, crazy things happen. They're just nuts. So the game ends. End an interaction safely and on a positive note. The game is over. Establish a positive foundation for any future interactions. Leave people in a better state of mind than when you found them during the game. Be happy. You will probably see them again. So we want this to be positive. When the game's over, people, move quickly. Even if it's a good game and it's nothing, get off the field. Trot yourself off that field. Don't seek recognition, but accept it if it's given. Because you don't know how much they loved you or not. I've heard many stories about this. So I went up and all of a sudden they blasted me. Because they're sneaky. They're sneaky people. They'll bring you in and then just to get you and then they'll go on you. And know what your exit routes are. If you're getting gas from the team in the third base dugout, and that's where you came into the game, you probably shouldn't exit that way. I go as far as watching where you park. As far away as you can get from the field and get away. Now, if somebody stops and wants to, and it happens, you're walking, don't be rude to people. But I've had people go, there was a guy years ago that in the 90s, I was on a 3-person crew with Bill Topp and Gary Kelkoff. We did UWM's games, Division I games. And there was a guy that had done their non-conference, and after a game, he went and got the team to sign his ball and took a picture with the team. He never worked another college game in his career. Okay, this isn't soccer where they all shake hands afterwards and the officials wait. I guarantee if this was going to be physical out there, those officials would get out of there. But get off the field. Trot off the field. Okay, one other thing I want to bring up before I finish. Debrief your games with your partner. Sit down and talk about how the game went. Talk about first question you should ask each of yourself. How are you? How'd you do? How'd you feel back there? Gary would do that. Kelkoff to me, how'd you feel back there? When he'd say that, he would think, that was my cue, I missed a couple pitches. And I would say, yeah, I missed it. He goes, yeah. He said, I saw a couple pitches. I saw this and that. But with your partner, how'd you do? How do you feel? Here's what I think was really good. Here's what was not so good, and fix whatever you did. Because we aren't perfect, and you want to improve. I've had umpires ask me and critique after the game, and how did I do? And I'd walk with them back, and I'd say, well, here's what you do. Oh, my God. I go, well, don't ask the question then. If you think I'm hurting your feelings, you know, but you have to improve, so debrief with yourself. That's my contact information. Mike and these guys know how to get a hold of me. Vistelar, that's the website. You want my book, it's on Vistelar. It's $12. It's on Amazon too. There's no pictures in it though. There is in the appendix ways how to learn this stuff. And you know what? If you got stories, email them to me. Because we learn from each other. We learn from each other. And thank you guys. I mean that on the top more than you. Thanks for what you do. Because you are stay out there. We can get, and I see myself as an advocate. If anybody wants me to go sit in front of athletic directors, I'll do it. And I'll sit in front of game managers, and I've been asked by baseball club teams to come and talk to their parents. And I've got that pending coming up to do like little sit-downs with parents and say, here's what we're teaching the officials, here's what we expect out of you, here's what the kids should expect. My kids, I taught them how to be humble on the field. I told them you could show emotion, but emotion doesn't mean disrespecting the other team. Athletics has too much disrespect, and what they say is they're just out there having fun. If they want to go out and do their stuff, and that's fine. But yesterday I watched something, and I can't remember what game it was, and the guy stood in the end zone mocking the other fans. That's disrespect. It's not having fun. It's being a knob. It's being a knob. Everybody remember Dave Casper? What was Dave Casper famous for with Oakland?
The rolling fumble.
Rolling fumble play. But when he'd score a touchdown, right to the official and run off the field. As Lou Holtz used to say, if you're going to take your helmet off when you do something good, you take it off when you do something bad. The people, they'll tell you that's the old guy thing. I said, no, that's being respectful. I always go back to, is that when I talk to my kids or other kids, is that respectful? Let's sit down and think about that. Would you like that if somebody did it to you? No, disrespectful. And we can't throw fastballs at their head anymore.
Damn.
Which wasn't good either. Hitting them in a fatty area was okay. So, if you got any questions, I'll be hanging around. Otherwise, I went a little later than normal, but I covered what I wanted to cover. And I hope you guys got something out of it. Have a great season. I'll be out there looking for you. I'll be the guy applauding if you make a great call. If you don't make a great call, I'll just want to know how well you sold it. So,
Thank you.
boom, throw them out. All right, thanks you guys.